Hey guys, Alex here. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be breaking down the standards for professional real estate consulting in the Philippines. The real estate consultant is the highest level of the real estate profession, and it can't be undertaken by just anyone because you have to have 10 years experience as a broker or 5 years experience as an appraiser. Plus, you need to submit a feasibility study as one of the requirements for applying to take the exam. So it's kind of hard, and that is why there are standards that all consultants must uphold to keep the integrity of the profession. As a professional real estate consultant, you must communicate competent, disinterested, and biased advice, professional guidance, and sound judgment in a manner that will be meaningful to the client and not misleading to the public. The purpose of these standards is to make a clear benchmark of what is expected in the real estate consulting profession. It is equally important for clients to know these standards as well so that you will know what to expect from your real estate consultants. So 3 provisions are noted: the competency provision, ethical provision, and departure provision. Let's begin with the ethical provision. Because of the responsibilities consultants must bear, they observe the highest standards of professional ethics, which is divided into 4 main areas: conduct, management, confidentiality, and record keeping. So first, let's go with conduct. The conduct of a real estate consultant must be legal, ethical, and moral. This means that as a consultant, you must act as a disinterested third party, giving an unbiased service with impartiality, objectivity, and independence. In order to do this, consultants must avoid actions that could mislead people. They must never assume any condition unless, number 1, it is disclosed in the report with an explanation for its adoption, where it's applicable, and the limitation of the hypothesis inferred. Number 2, it must not be misleading. And number 3, required for reasonable analysis, comparison, and development of logical hypothesis. And 4th, required in compliance with internationally accepted operating procedures. Then management, the acceptance of payment for coming up with a predetermined conclusion is unethical because consultants have the moral responsibility to act in an impartial and disinterested manner. Aside from this, bribery and false advertising is also unethical. Confidentiality. A consultant must not disclose confidential data or the results of an engagement with a client to other people except persons authorized by the client, third parties authorized by the law, and duly authorized professional peer reviewer. Record keeping. A consultant must keep records of a consulting engagement for at least 5 years. The form, style, and type of medium for these written records should be chosen carefully to make sure they are easily retrievable through the retention period. Oral reports should be summarized in writing. And then we come to the competency provision. Prior to entering into a consulting agreement, a consultant must identify the subject of consultation that needs to be addressed and have the knowledge and experience to complete the engagement, or disclose the lack of knowledge or experience prior to the engagement, take all the needed steps to finish the engagement, and describe the lack of knowledge or experience and then take the steps needed to finish the engagement in a competent manner. Departure provision. So this provision permits limited departures from the uniform standards that are specific guidelines and not binding requirements. The consultant must disclose the departure to the client and must ensure it won't lead to confusion. A consultant may also get a consulting engagement that does not require the standard consultation work, provided that first, it has been determined that the consulting process performed won't be so limited that the result may only end up confusing the client. Second, the client is informed that the engagement calls for something less than or different from the usual work required, and the client agrees that a limited consulting service would be appropriate. Jurisdictional exception. There are 8 standards to the real estate consulting practice, and these are divided into 4 classes. So general standards, technical standards, reporting standards, and fee structure standards. So for general standards, this relates to the prerequisites to the satisfactory attainment of a consulting service. So there are three standards under the general standards. So standard number one, the consulting practice is to be performed by a person who has adequate technical training and proficiency as a consultant. So proficiency is recognized by being legally licensed to practice. And for technical training, it's first acquired through formal education and must be continued through experience so that you're always learning and growing. Standard number two, in all matters relating to the assignment, independence in mental attitude is to be maintained. The consultant must be impartial and honest in his or her feedback. And then standard number three, due professional care is to be exercised in the performance of the consulting service and preparation of the report. And then we go to technical standards. There are three standards under technical standards. So technical standards indicates the requirements for satisfactory conduct in consulting practice. So standard number four, in giving consulting service, the consultant must first be aware, understand, and correctly use methods needed to create creditable results. Second, must not commit error of omission, which will greatly alter the results, and not perform service in a careless or negligent way. So the consultant should have the ability to develop an analysis and research program that will meet the client's objective, to perform primary research, gather needed data, and prepare a written report. Identifying the client's objective is crucial because there's a difference between performing an impartial consulting service versus one that's intended to facilitate in meeting the client's objective. Impartial consulting cannot be compensated based on the results. Standard number five, in giving consulting service, the consultant must clearly identify the client's objective, define the problem, purpose, and intended use of the consulting service, consider the data collection process, identify the property under consideration, describe any limiting conditions, and the effective date of consulting service. And then collect, verify, and reconcile the data needed to complete the service. If the market value of the property is needed, then appraisal should be done, and apply the right tools to data collection. And then standard number six, in giving consulting service, the consultant must observe the following guidelines when a recommendation is given. So first, identify alternative ways to meet the client's objective and analyze the implications. Second, identify the constraints to each alternative and measure their impact. And third, identify needed resources. Fourth, identify the best course of action to achieve the client's goal. Reporting standards. So this indicates the requirements for the expression of an advice, how the advice is presented to the client. Standard number seven, which is under reporting standards, the report shall contain whether it's presented in accordance to the uniform standards of professional realty consulting practice. So this includes not only the standards but the methods in applying them, and the consultant must be updated of any changes in the standards of consulting practice. Standard 8, in reporting the results, the consultant must communicate each analysis, opinion, and conclusion in a manner that is not misleading. So the report must be clear and accurate and contain sufficient information so the people reading the report can understand it. And of course, you need to disclose any extraordinary assumption or limiting condition and indicate its impact on the final conclusion. Each written report must comply with the following guidelines. So define the objective, state the purpose of the consulting service, describe the property, indicate effective date of consulting service report, describe scope of work and extent of data collection, indicate assumptions and limiting conditions that will affect the conclusion, indicate the information considered, consulting procedures followed, and reasoning behind the conclusion. Final recommendation. Any additional information that may be appropriate to show compliance with or permitted departures from the requirements to standard engagement. And then there must also be a signed certification attached to the report. Fee structure standards. This relate to a just compensation for the service rendered by a consultant. Standard number 9 is under the fee structure standard. A consultant must observe the following fee structure. So charge reasonable fees in relation to the services rendered. Reasonableness is based on services given, time required, experience, ability, reputation, responsibility, and client benefits. And don't offer your service under the arrangement that no fee will be charged unless a specific result is rendered. Agree with the client in advance on the fee if possible, and don't pay to get a client. Don't also structure pricing in the way that impairs objectivity. And that's it for the standards for realty consulting practice. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, I will see you in my next video.